major risks of the of illicit trade is number one, revenue collection. We are a revenue organization, and illicit trade steals from the revenue base, and it doesn't only steal from the revenue base insofar as customs and excise taxes is concerned, but actually the full length of the SARS tax base. The second area which is also a major risk is the fact that it actually closes down companies, and that means that people are losing their jobs and their livelihood, and that actually leads to some other forms of criminality, etc. I spoke about the fact that it actually cuts across the tax base. This obviously means that when people lose their jobs, that from personal income tax perspective and company income tax perspective, when these companies close down, it's actually a loss to SARS and to the whole of South Africa, because those monies are extremely necessary to have the basic services in place that also supports the poor and the needy for that matter. The third area of risk is that many of the products that comes in through illicit trade actually has a particular impact on health. That they are not suitable from a health perspective for use by South Africans for that matter. They are substandard products, and they are not approved by instances such as the NRCS for that matter, and therefore they put further strain on the health system of South Africa. The last part which I will kind of focus on is the fact that it leads to criminality. When we talk about illicit trade and we talk about industries such as or illicit trade in tobacco and cigarettes, or illicit trade in clothing and textiles and things like that, we're not talking about petty crime, we are talking about big time syndication, and these activities in many ways also sponsors further criminal activities such as terrorism, human trafficking and other forms of syndicated crime.
Yes, indeed, your tax matters. Greetings to our partners in trade, SMME traders, taxpayers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's our pleasure to have you here today. My name is Hansen Msongweni. I'm the executive responsible for the traders and travelers within the SMME segment unit here in SARS. Our webinar is about the illicit trade and counterfeit procedure, as the video highlighted by our Director of Customs and the hard work that our custom officers are putting to fight this scourge. Being true to our commitment to the community in terms of developing and administering a tax and a customs system based on voluntary compliance, today's webinar aims to provide awareness and educate SMME traders and taxpayers. We want to provide all traders about the illicit trade procedure and the counterfeit activities. We further want to highlight the impact it has in our economy and to social security. We believe this will help us to achieve our goal of ensuring voluntary compliance among our traders and taxpayers. In leading today's program, we are going to have opening remarks by Memorindo. Our presenter for this evening will be presented by Mr. Patrick Moweng. We have created a platform for questions and answers. Our panel of experts will be able to answer your questions live in this webinar. We have two platforms for you traders and ladies and gentlemen, where you can send us your questions. You can send us your questions through questions@sars.gov.za. You can further send us questions through this Zoom chat, and our colleagues will be able to respond to all the questions. I want to confirm to all the attendees and participants here that we are also live in our SARS YouTube platform. At the end of this webinar, we are going to have a short survey. Please rate our webinar We will want to hear from you. We will want to get your feedback. Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to have you here, and thank you. Allow me to take this opportunity to introduce Memorindo, who will be giving us the opening remarks. Memorindo has 19 years experience in SARS Customs. She has been in the leadership role for the past 16 years of the 19 years. She is currently a senior manager in Mpumalanga and leading all the customs branches there. Memory specializes in leadership, and she's involved in the whole government approach within Mpumalanga region in combating illicit trade. She's also involved in employment equity committees and women in leadership. Academically, Memory holds Masters in Business Administration, BBA degree, and honors in human resource. Outside work environment, Memory is also involved in a number of social responsibility supporting underprivileged kids. Join me in welcoming Memory to give us her remarks. Thank you, Memory.
Good evening, all. Thank you, Program Director. A warm welcome to SARS colleagues, different stakeholders online. The aim of today's webinar is to educate and provide awareness about illicit trade and counterfeit procedures. Furthermore, to elaborate on the negative impact to our economy and the society. SARS exists to serve the high purpose of enabling government to build a capable state that fosters sustainable economic growth and social development that serves the well-being of all South Africans. Once again, SARS by law is mandated to collect revenue due, as well as to ensure optimal compliance and tax and customs legislation. As we continue to educate and provide awareness to our traders and taxpayers, we ensure that we are aligned to our SARS 9 strategic objectives. And in combating the illicit trade, we prioritize 5 SARS strategic objectives. Number 1, we ensure that we provide clarity and certainty for our taxpayers and traders of their obligation. Make it easier for taxpayers and traders to comply with their obligation. We continue to detect taxpayers and traders who do not comply, making non-compliance hard and costly, and also ensure that we increase and expand the use of data within comprehensive knowledge and management framework to ensure integrity, derive insight, and improve outcomes. We work together with and through stakeholders to improve the tax ecosystem. It is important also to note that the illicit trade and counterfeit has a direct negative impact to our economy and the society, contributing to the closures of businesses, job losses, and harmful product to the society. It is further has a direct negative impact to revenue collections that affect government basic service delivery. The ports of entry become key in protecting the economy of the country and people. We also take into cognizance that the illicit and counterfeit goods are not only smuggled into the country, but also illegally manufactured in our country. We will continue to expand the base and collaborate with law enforcement agencies, as well maintaining the effective partnership with the business community at large, since that is vital in tackling the negative effects of illicit trade in our economy and society as a whole. So far, in detecting and make it costly for traders who do not comply, SARS has already recorded the seizure of goods valued at 1.9 billion since April to August 2021, compared to 2.3 billion for the whole of 2020-2021 financial year. SARS as an organization is committed to continue combating illicit trade and counterfeit goods entering the country. This we do together with other law enforcement agencies. And we sincerely appreciate the continuous support of the business community and society at large in curbing the scourge of illicit trade. Once again, you are welcome to this important webinar tonight. Thank you, Program Director. Over to you.
Thank you, Memory. Thank you very much for that warm welcome and the clarity that you have given us about this webinar. Traders, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, now we're getting to the next item of our program, which is the most critical part of this webinar. I would like to introduce Patrick Moweng, who will be giving us the presentation for this evening. Patrick Moweng is a career law enforcement officer with extensive knowledge and experience in intelligence investigation, tax and customs enforcement. He is currently an executive in Custom Investigative Unit at SARS, and he has led various high-level organizational teams in areas of customs and excise, enforcement investigation, and research. Patrick also represents SARS in government as the leader of the Interagency Working Group on Illicit Economy. He holds master's degree in business leadership as well as international customs law administration. He also acquired several diplomas and certificates from various higher education institutions. Let me give it to Patrick to take us through the presentation for this evening. Thank you. I can see, Patrick, you are coming in. Thank you. You are on mute, Mr. Moweng. Just unmute yourself. Thank you.
Good evening, Program Director, as well as the keynote speaker, Memory Doe, for the warm welcome and introduction of the topic. I would like to take this opportunity at the moment to thank you for the introductions, as well as the opportunity to participate in a very important activity that we are going to engage upon this evening. It is the topic such as illicit trade and counterfeit procedures that actually is intended to assist all of us in terms of ensuring that as law enforcement officers, as well as our partners in business and different role players, we claim our space in the value chain. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to have been provided the platform to engage with yourselves this evening with a topic that is very close to my heart, such as this one, which is counterfeit, as well as illicit trade. Counterfeit may be referred to as in different names, such as fake, phony product, forged product, imitations, and sham. However, all of those products are known to have been produced illegally, and they are fed into the space where all the goods that are dealt with in a legal way are working. And they are also delivered or produced within the same value chain that we are actually diverting or moving the legal goods. Counterfeit is not just one of the few crimes against the owners of intellectual property, but it is an integral part of the conglomerate of a huge business enterprise known as illicit trade. I always refer to illicit trade as the monster that eats into the sovereignty of the states, as it undermines the legal systems and erodes the capacity of state to meet their strategic objectives and eventually collapse them. If I have to pause and explain myself on that particular matter, I will indicate that due to illicit trade, many of the activities that are taking place in that particular space actually lend themselves to activities that deny the countries or the nation states to collect the revenue that are supposed to be used to support their program, to maintain the livelihood of their economies, and then improve the economies of those particular countries so that they can deal with the problems of service delivery, employment, poverty, and inequalities. Should illicit trade thrive in our space, it will indeed diminish the sovereignty of different nation states. How does it do that? If our GDP against the debt goes up and it's rising the manner in which it is rising, we will be forced as a country to go and look for money from the international organizations that can borrow us money. And I would like to get an indication whether I'm still audible from the program director.
Yes, Mr. Mweng, we can hear you. You are on mute.
Okay, thank you very much. Therefore, if the different nation states are able to meet their requirements in terms of the revenue that they're supposed to be collecting, they will have to go to international companies where they are going to borrow money. And borrowing that money comes with a lot of conditions that will actually compromise the manner in which the policies and the laws of the country which is lending money is going to operate going forward. And that is a challenge that as a country we cannot be able to afford.
Mr. Mweng,
yes, sir.
I'm sorry to disturb you, sir. We have lost your presentation now.
I haven't displayed the presentation as yet.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes. I'm trying to, let me display the presentation.
Thank you. We can see it. Go ahead, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will be talking. Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies. We will be talking as we go through. Therefore, as I was talking about and introducing the topic, I was indicating that illicit trade as a conglomerate of an enterprise that is done parallel to the legal trade that is taking place is actually eating into the sovereignty of our country. And I was giving an example that should we not be able to meet our requirements of the programs that are supposed to uplift and develop our different countries, we are going to find ourselves having to go hand in hand to different institutions that are going to borrow us money from the international space. And that will deprive us of the ability to determine our policies as a country and to manage our country the manner in which we are supposed to be doing. It is the fear that is supposed to occupy all of us when we deal with this particular topic of illicit trade, which also includes the counterfeit. In an effort to do justice to this particular important topic, which is in front of us, I've structured my presentation in a way that it will first talk to illicit trade, its manifestations and implications to the economy and the social being of the community, as well as the implications thereof, because it is indeed about that. It is either we survive as a nation or illicit trade does. Illicit trade in its different manifestations, including intellectual property infringement, is not a victimless crime. We will come back to this later on. The second part of my presentation is going to talk specifically and focus on the nucleus of the discourse, which is counterfeit procedures. Efforts will be made to uplift the thread that exists between a number of acts of illicit trade across the entire value chain, so that we can all come out of this with little bit of understanding from where we were before the presentation today, in terms of the extent of the problem and how best we can work our way out of the problem and make a change. Ladies and gentlemen, the next slide talks to the definition of illicit trade. And I've taken liberty to look at the different international organizations' definition of illicit trade, as it will assist us in terms of navigating through this. In terms of illicit trade and the World Trade Organizations, raising awareness, identifying limitations, and building strategies document. It defines illicit trade as a global problem which abuses the international trade system and negates the foundation of the multilateral legal framework. Illicit trade destabilizes institutions, recognizes no frontiers, and nullifies the collective objectives of the fair trade. It is indeed correct because it seeks to undermine the legal system, which actually tries to facilitate trade in a legal way. The WTO working definition of illicit trade reads as follows. Illicit trade means any commercial practice, underline commercial, or transaction related to the production, acquisition, sale, purchase, shipment, movement, transfer, receipt, possession, or distribution of any illicit product defined as such by international law. The second part talks to any licit or illegal product that is used for non-licit purposes as defined by the international law. So both of them are the functions of the law that defines what needs to be done and what should be done. And that is where the regulatory authorities are coming in to ensure that whilst they educate and improve compliance, they also enforce to ensure that all of us are going to be compliant in this value chain. How does it manifest? According to the World Customs Organization 2017 illicit trade report, the areas of risk that I'm going to talk to now as the assumed conversion point of will practically accentuate the definition of illicit trade. So I'm using these particular areas to go down to the basic meaning of what actually constitutes illicit trade. The first one is the issue of illicit trafficking. Illicit trafficking or movement of goods from one area to the another of the stolen or looted cultural objects that include both archaeological objects and works of art falls within the space of illicit trade. Most of the archaeological objects and work of arts have been misplaced. They have been taken from many countries, Africa being one of the victims, and they became part of the victims of illicit trade. As I've indicated, it is not a victimless crime. Drug trafficking is an easy example of the illicit goods that actually find themselves within the trade value chain, within which all the legal operators are working. It includes the cultivation, the manufacture, distribution, and sale of substances subject to drug prohibition laws. We know very well there are different prohibition laws that talk to illegal drugs that are being utilized. And in terms of that particular definition, each and every nation state will take action with regard to those drugs. There are also environmental risks relating to trafficking of endangered species that are protected by the CITES, hazardous and toxic waste, ozone depleting substances, and trading of indigenous protected timber, which is one of the goods that you will find mainly from Zambia. We know of the mukula tree that is being exported mainly through our country for its destination in Europe for luxury items that are manufactured. But there is a lot of trafficking of such to go to deprive the countries that are actually supposed to benefit from that, of doing that. Intellectual property rights is one of the examples that I will be using as an example of illicit trade that is taking place. Indeed, intellectual property rights are the only rights that those who have actually came with innovative ideas of producing those are supposed to be protected by the laws of different countries to ensure that those innovations are finding their way into the correct space and they are actually of good quality that can be consumed by our people without harming them. And they can also not be used for the parts of the different mechanical items, such as the aircraft as well as the vehicles that can actually pose danger to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many health and safety risks relating to the trade in counterfeit. One of the examples that I would like to use and pose at this particular stage is that whilst we are in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is the study that was conducted by Europol, whose reports indicate that there is about 400% increase in the take of the fake goods related to fighting COVID-19. Now that is pretty scary stuff from some of the horror movies, if you think about it. Lives can be lost in the process. It can cause damages that are going to cause chronic diseases to people. Some of those kind of things that we find in that particular space includes the equipments that are used in cardiovascular diseases. As I've indicated, none of you will actually be comfortable in terms of boarding a flight which is suspected of having some parts that are actually counterfeited. It is for that reason that later on I will be asking the brand holders as to what their role will be in terms of improving the knowledge as well as the education and awareness of the consumers about the products that can be counterfeited. The products that pose a threat to our health, such as pharmaceutical, including the veterinary medicines, foodstuffs, toys, and substandard items, including the electrical components, find their way into the market. And the dangers of that are self-explanatory. And then I'm not going to go deeper into trying to explain what impact they can cause because it's quite obvious. The next one is the revenue risk that is brought about by illicit trade. The risk of the revenue, as I've earlier on indicated, is that most of the African countries or developing countries depend on the revenue that coming from the taxes and customs and excise duties that are being paid so that they can finance the programs of their respective countries. If they fail to do that, their sovereignty is tested. If they fail to do that, there is an instability in the country. If they fail to do that, many of the governments or the states get overthrown out of greed and the impact of illicit trade. It manifests in terms of the leakages through the smuggling of highly taxed goods such as tobacco, alcohol, and motor spirits, plus commercial fraud activities such as undervaluation. An example that I can give here is that as we speak at the moment since 2018, as SARS, we have established the undervaluation team that focuses on the undervaluation taking place that is rampant within clothing, footwear, textile, and leather. As part of the program that has been launched by the president and led by the Department of Trade and Industry to develop the master plans aimed at improving local manufacturing, making sure that the smuggling and other contraventions that are happening within the customs value chain are not going to take place, such as the misuse of origin and preferential duties and misclassification, including the drawbacks. It is for that reason that, colleagues, I'm going to move now to the issues relating to security risks, which most of us know. We do have a lot of examples, but the most blatant one that we know is that one of the 911. That is the act of terrorism that actually feeds from the illicit trade proceeds. Proliferations of weapons of mass destruction, trafficking of small arms and explosive, and as well as diversion of dual goods contribute immensely to the growth of this enterprise called illicit trade. Whilst we are sitting as different regulatory authorities and nation states and planning how to take care of our people and then improve our economies and address the issues of non-compliance, the entrepreneurs within the illicit trade are also sitting. And then in most cases, they are always a step ahead from us. Furthermore, the criminals use the various methods to circumvent the excise duties. Indirect taxes on the sale of use of specific products, as I've indicated earlier on. There was a panel of experts that was led by the former President Thabo Mbeki. In 2015, they presented their report to the Pan-Africanist Parliament on the flow of monies from Africa into different countries. And then they identified a number of areas that are actually prone to be utilized to get money out of the country. The panel report indicated the following areas. Falsification of prices, which is trade mispricing, is one of them. Quantities and qualities of the goods that are being brought into the country and being declared for customs purposes is another one. Transfer pricing, profit shifting, tax evasion, and tax incentive are some of the complex mechanisms that are used mainly by the bigger conglomerate to rob the government of the fiscus that is supposed to come to them. Ladies and gentlemen, that is part of the organized crime. You cannot define it in any other way than saying that, calling it what it is. The risk of illicit trade, I was tempted to indicate that some of the risks that are identified here have been alluded to before. But for the sake of emphasis, I will go through them quickly. There are lower revenues for the fiscus that are coming in as a result of the fact that not all the duties and customs and excise values are being paid to the fiscus, because everybody wants to make profit out of the enterprise that they have. And we shouldn't be surprised when we see the people who are operating within the illicit trade doing that. We just need to do our work from our side. And I think a platform of this nature is going to give us an opportunity of understanding each other, learning about each other, learning about the concept that is in front of us or the phenomenon that is in front of us, and then coming up with the plans in terms of how we can beat those entrepreneurs who are operating within the illegal space. Circumvention of support put in place by government for local industries. There are a number of local support that is put in place. The example that I was giving now of the different master plans that are developed through the Department of Trade and Industry in partnership with labor and the whole of government is an example of that. But there are those who will come into that particular space to try and circumvent that because it is eroding the space or the comfort space within which they operate. The erosion of productive capacity in the country is one of the challenges that we currently have. Because if you lose the productive capacity of the country, the factories are closed, the jobs are lost, particularly in the manufacturing sector. I spoke about clothing and textile earlier on. In the recent past, we have lost and closed down a lot of manufacturers or in the industry of clothing and textile as a result of inflow of cheap goods as well as counterfeited goods into our country. It is only now that we are beginning to claw back and make an impact into that particular space. But what we are doing is just the beginning. I think there is more that still needs to be done. And we have committed ourselves as an organization to tackle such a problem because we know our space in the entire value chain. Limiting our potential to grow and create jobs happens when illicit trade manifests. And it is our duty to ensure that we stop there. The lower company profits, unfair competition for legitimate trade happens as a result of the fact that those who import goods without paying necessary taxes are able to come up with the prices or profit prices that they are actually lower and attract consumers into their space, more so when they use counterfeited goods, because they come as part of, as if they are the real goods, but they come at the lower price. And the lines are going to run for that. Therefore, it erodes the level playing field that the government is supposed to achieve within different industries. It also disincentivizes innovation by companies. I spoke about illicit IPR as one property that comes out of the minds of and perception of the people, who then convert that particular product into a utility-based product that can contribute to improving our health, to improving the manner in which we do business, and so on. And they protect those things by registering them as their copyrights as well as the trademarks. I will go back to that a little bit later. Illicit trade also undermines the government's effort to promote health. For example, we know very well that we are dealing with the issue of health and then deterring people from smoking continuously. Therefore, that is why you've got the sin taxes in cigarette. But through the production or illegal production of cigarettes and alcohol and so on, the illicit traders actually undermine the promotion of health that the government would like to take. And they put the burden on the government to deal with the consequences of bad health. They also undermine the security of the country, standards and well-being of its people. They undermine the government's effort to curb corruption, because whilst you are involved in corruption, in most cases than not, you are going to find that those who are involved in that have the capacity to also bribe their way out of jail or out of any form of investigation. I also indicated earlier on there are social tensions, which leads to also political tensions. As a result of government not being able to collect revenue to meet their objectives, service delivery is compromised. And what happens is that many people go into the streets and then instability happens and so on, justifiably so. But what happens, which is actually very bad, is that when the jobs are lost, when the students who have qualifications cannot find their jobs because illicit trade is actually being successful, it has got consequential effects such as the criminal festering into that environment. That leads into social tension. Ladies and gentlemen, I've earlier on alluded to the study that was conducted led by the former President Thabo Mbeki. And I'm going to quickly run through the findings of that particular panel, whose report came out in 2015. It has indicated that it is estimated that over the last 50 years, Africa lost in excess of $1 trillion in terms of illicit financial flows. That is a lot of money. And then it can be turned out into the GDPs of a number of countries combined. So the effect of illicit financial flow, which emanates from the activities coming from the illicit trade, cannot be undermined, cannot be understated. Finding of illicit financial flows indicates that 60% of illicit financial flows derive from large commercial companies. I've alluded to the fact that they use profit shifting, transgressions with regard to transfer pricing, and other complex mechanisms to deceive the tax authorities of the amount of money that needs to be collected. 30% of illicit financial flows is through criminal activities and drug trafficking, and 10% from corruption activities. You may look at the 10% of corruption activities and think that is a little bit low, but it is the exodus of everything. Because if corruption can be eradicated, you are going to close out all the loops, making it difficult for anybody to interfere with our systems. Outflow of capital from Africa and somewhere else outside of Africa. And this is the reality. And this brings us to the fact that if Africa is underdeveloped, as we have said that it is underdeveloped, will it ever grow out of the clutches of poverty, inequality, and continued wars that are taking place if there is a lot of flow of cash or money from its country? It calls us into action, ladies and gentlemen, to work together to address this particular problem. Many African countries lack capacity to combat illicit financial flows. The skills that are required in this particular space, they need the top-notch people from the economics, accounting, and other related investigation disciplines to come together and do this. Unfortunately, our African countries are still lacking in capacity to combat that. But there can always be a way of addressing this particular problem. We will come back to that at a later stage. Ill-informed policy decisions to grant tax incentives leading to harmful tax competition is also one of those. So the policy part of it is something that needs to be attended to. In 2018, the Tobacco Institute of Southern Africa commissioned a study by one of the research companies, which actually indicated that tobacco industry in South Africa is estimated at about 29 billion and contributes approximately 17.2 billion in excise duty and VAT per annum. It is estimated that, and it's very important, the point that I'm raising now, this is the one that I want to articulate. It's spoken about the erosion of the employment which Africa dearly needs. So if we are going to allow or we are going to leave tobacco or illegal tobacco manufacturing, distribution, sale, and so on to continue thriving, we are going to have a consequence that we don't want to deal with, of people losing jobs, where we have got the high level of unemployment in South Africa as an example. So it is calling us into action, all of us who are sitting around the table, to say, can we wear a different cap and say, what is it that needs to be done? And I think and believe that there is a lot that needs to be done. The next slide actually is the accentuation of what I've spoken about, which is actually captured in the extract of President Thabo Mbeki's speech when addressing the Pan-African Parliament on the excessive cost to Africa of illicit financial flows. And I quote, "Our heads of state and government said they are aware that the problem of illicit financial flows is exacerbated by corrupt tendencies of government agencies. Let that sink." We read a lot about the corruption in different countries, and then how it eats into the fiscus, and then how it actually negates the good work that the government is supposed to be doing for its own people. That is one point that I wanted to raise with regard to that. Lack of or weak African institutions, both at national and continental level, in all sectors. Governance challenges, political instability and conflicts, weak tax administrations, and lack of capacity to monitor and curb such criminal activities, amongst others. Close quotes. I'm not going to go deeper into explaining this because I think it's self-explanatory. And then I've spoken about it in the previous slides, and I'm still going to talk about them in the other slides going forward. Central to this discussion above is the regulatory entities' role and responsibility in stamping out illicit trade, both at the national, regional, as well as the global level. This point will further be expanded upon when we talk about what solutions are we proposing or are we putting on the table to address the challenges of illicit trade, considering that illicit trade denies Africa much needed capital for development to alleviate poverty and inequality. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to move swiftly into the next item, which is closely linked to, or is a subset of illicit trade, which is the counterfeit. Just as a reminder, our topic today is about the illicit trade and counterfeit procedures. And then I'll be trying to address the issues of the mechanisms that we have in place to address the counterfeit, legislation being the primary one, and other related secondary pieces of legislation. Acts constituting counterfeit, just to expatiate a little bit on those, the socio-economic impact, the impact of counterfeit, the role of customs and other government departments, the powers and duties of the officers in terms of the different acts that I will be referring to. How do we go about without dealing with the execution of the search without a warrant, lodging a complaint with an inspector, and very importantly, I'm going to also talk about the duties of the brand holders after seizure, but I will also allude to the prior to seizure. What role is it that they are playing and beyond that? And the biggest part of our discussion also is about the impact on SMMEs. Let us remember that the SMMEs are a target segment for the South African Revenue Service in terms of imparting knowledge and education so that we can grow that particular segment, which contributes immensely to the growth of our economy. And then we will go to the penalties that are associated with the contraventions that we find in the process. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the joint study by OECD and the EU Property Office on the economic impact of counterfeit in the world trade, trade in counterfeit and pirated goods amount to up to 2.5% of the world trade. This is a lot of money if you look at what is the amount of the world trade as we speak. And then IPR, unlike other properties, is a creation of mindset which is turned into a utility field product or service in a highly competitive and ever-growing society with all its needs. With development of a lot of technology, each and everyone has their logos, brand names, markings, etc. And those are used to protect these properties from being infringed. Trademarks are the important part of the brands as they give consumers trust in the authenticity of the product as well as its quality. Therefore, trade in counterfeit and pirated goods remains a major challenge in an innovation-driven global economy. These practices have a negative effect on the sales and profits of affected firms, while also having adverse revenue, economic, health, safety, and security effects for governments, business, and consumers alike. Organized criminal groups are seen as playing an increasingly important role in these activities by benefiting significantly from the profitable counterfeit and piracy goods. Ladies and gentlemen, the part that I'm talking about at the moment is the mirror of whatever is contained in some of the slides. So I'm not going to go through each and every slide and read through it. Counterfeit violates manufacturers' property rights and ability to make profits out of innovation. It undermines brand names and business reputation that manufacturers take ages to establish. There is a lot of work that goes into that particular space before you can see something written Adidas or Nike on the counters of different stores. Counterfeit confuses consumers as to the quality and origin of the product and services. This is where we need to look at what kind of knowledge are we imparting to the people? What kind of education are we actually imparting to our people to ensure that they are well informed about these things? I'm going to call upon those who are involved in this particular value chain, such as the businesses, to take their position in the efforts to clamp down on illicit trade. Clamping down doesn't necessarily mean the efforts such as enforcement that the government is currently dealing with. The question that I will be asking is, how do we change public perceptions on the dangers of IP and specifically counterfeit? Of course, at the face value, somebody is going to say it is difficult. Of course, it looks quite difficult, and then we need to look at it differently because the consumers' demand are different. Some of the people are looking for the cheaper items to bargain from. Secondly,
we seem to have technical challenges.
I was interrupted.
Thank you,
Can
Pat.
the
You can
program
proceed.
director confirm that I'm still audible?
Yes, we are audible. Proceed.
Thank you very much. I was on the fact that I was saying that the kids, if you capture them whilst they are still young, you are more likely to influence them in terms of their view towards what is legal and what is illegal. So I'm calling upon those who are in the value chain. There are NGOs out there. There are different businesses who are owners of this particular products. What kind of researches can we go into that are going to identify the drivers in different sectors of this party of the populace? We are not supposed to be using a single message there for everybody. We need research into technology and education into why people buy, so that we can craft the message and education properly. And then work with government, work with the structures such as SARS, which is involved in the string of different activities that are aimed at educating people and raising people, especially within raising awareness, especially within the SMMEs. I was still on the point that the counterfeit also confuses consumer as to the quality and origin of the products and services. It undermines the trademark quality and the same laws that are intended to support the manufacturers. Counterfeit forces manufacturers to divert money they could have used.
Sorry, Mr. Maweng.
Yes,
Mr. Maweng, we have lost your screen now. Oh, thank you. You are back now.
It was deliberate, Chairperson. The idea was I wanted to give the background into the counterfeit and so on without distraction. However, I'll go back to that one. Counterfeit forces manufacturers to divert the money that they could have used to expand businesses and contribute to the fiscal and well-being of the nation states by diverting it into the efforts to protect their brands. I'm sure we can do much better than that as we speak at the moment. So if efforts are put into claim to fight the crime on illicit trade or on counterfeit, is the penny that can be used to create 2 or more jobs in the environment. Of course, I've already defined what counterfeits are. I'm not going to go into a lot of these things because they have already been explained as to what counterfeits are. There are different types of intellectual property rights that, according to law, we are supposed to or we are expected to protect. And the 2 most important infringed IPR fields are copyright as well as trademark. But however, there are others relating to patents, layout designs, control of anti-competitive practices, and so on. These are some of those that are actually outlined in our pieces of legislation. There are different acts which constitutes counterfeiting. Some of them include, and it is very important here, especially for our SMMEs, because in most cases we come across the SMMEs who actually bear the brand of having enforcement launched upon them for being in possession of infringing goods in the course of their business. This may be because of lack of knowledge, but some of them are involved in the process of dealing with counterfeits. Manufacturing or making of or producing infringing goods for non-private or domestic use is one of the acts. The selling, hiring, and exchanging of infringing goods is one of them. Exhibiting infringing goods for the purpose of trade, distributing infringing goods for the purpose of trade and other purposes, importing infringing goods into or through or exporting from South Africa, the act of dealing in counterfeit or suspected counterfeit goods. This conglomerate of a number of different bullet points that talk to or constitute the act which deals with counterfeit shows that none of your activities in terms of the handling or moving or manufacturing of counterfeit goods will actually escape our scrutiny as the law enforcement agencies. At this point in time, I would like to share with you just the pictures of some of the items that are counterfeited. I think there is a lot of them. If I was going to use most of them, we were going to fill all the slides that are in front of us. If you look at the dish washing liquid that you see in front of us, the markings as well as the labels that are outside are a little bit different. But from the naked eye, somebody who buys this thing, who is not well informed, from one of the small businesses in the township and so on, they will take that what looks like sunlight and then it's written sunlight. The same with Raja. And then on Omo, you find that the example there is actually a spelling error that is actually a little bit amateurish for those who are involved in counterfeit and so on. So in most cases, through a naked eye, you may not be able to see that. But it helps then when we have got the brand holders who know the markings as well as the copyright characteristics of what they have, to assist us as law enforcement agencies to identify this and to assist the consumers in terms of avoiding what can be harmful to them. The impact of counterfeit goods in the South Africa are seen through the fact that South Africa is a global player and it cannot be isolated from the global community, and it is directly impacted by the scourge. That is why earlier on I indicated that illicit trade is the function of the trade supply chain which is not properly guarded. For 2019 and 2020 financial year, within the space of the counterfeit goods, SARS performed 1,301 counterfeit goods seizures to the value of 1.1 billion. This may seem to be a drop in an ocean. However, if you look at the other industries that the same teams with the capacity that we currently have at the moment is dealing with, it is a commendable job. There is more that can be done. But how do we do that? We will talk about it towards the end of this when we make proposals for the solution to the problem. However, the South African Revenue Service also depend on the risk as well as the information identification of what goods find themselves out in the space where we need to enforce. That is the trade supply chain that carry the legally traded goods. So goods infringing on intellectual property rights, such as those prohibited from entering the country due to lack of authorization and other legislative requirements, they find their way into the country because they are using the same trade value chain that we are using. And there are those that are not properly declared or are closely linked to other serious crimes such as money laundering and funding of terrorism. So the problem is vast. What is the role of customs in all of this? The role of customs and excise division is that it is the primary agency responsible for the protection of society. How do we protect the society? From accessing harmful goods, from allowing the harmful goods to be in their possession, as well as the economy, protecting the economy in terms of collection of revenue due from the duties as well as the taxes, consequentially to the transactions that we enter into with the business. It is acting as the first line of defense at our ports of entry. However, there is a lot of work that is done at the consumption level. So customs is therefore seized with the responsibility to protect intellectual property rights, which guards against the infringement of the global patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Customs and Excise Division intercept counterfeit and pirated goods that have a potential of bringing harm to the economy and threaten the security, health, and safety of South Africans. How do we do this? There are questions that have been asked as to why do we not stop everything that is coming through the ports of entry. The massive quantity of the goods that are coming into the country makes it very difficult to stop everything. Otherwise, we are going to clog our ports. It is therefore important to note that the South African Revenue Services as a whole, including Customs Division, use the risk methodology to identify the commodities that are high risk that are coming into the port of entry. So we are bound to have some of the goods finding themselves into the consumption market, where we also follow them and we intervene and make sure that we enforce the laws of the country. The use of the multi-pronged strategy involving the internal strength, such as the risk management that I've spoken to, the heightened enforcement activities at the ports, and strategic partnership remains a favorable proposition towards curbing the challenges posed by proliferation of counterfeit goods into our social space. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me at this point in time to introduce to you Commander Hugo Talliard, who is the commander for the Rapid Response Team, which is part of our enforcement team within the organization, tasked with intervening both at the ports of entry and then following the risks into the consumption level about the work that his team is currently doing, and then what are the challenges that they're experiencing, and then how do they work with other government departments to clamp down not only on illicit trade in general, but on counterfeit. Commander Talliard, can you use the few minutes of my presentation to sensitize the audience?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moeng. Good evening, all. Allow me then to share and refer to the frontline experience in this field of the prevention of counterfeit goods. SARS Customs form part of the whole of government approach in the detection and prevention of illicit trade, especially on the illicit trade in illegally imported goods and counterfeit goods. We join hands with the South African Police Service, Metropolitan Police, other government departments in joint operations such as Ukayamulao and economic stimulus operations in the fight against illicit trade in counterfeit goods. It is not always a friendly environment, as we are under severe attack by bystanders and non-compliant traders during these operations. Fortunately, no injuries reported in the last raid and enforcement that we've done in Johannesburg, but our vehicles were unfortunately damaged. This will, however, not deter us in the fight against the trade in illicit trade in counterfeit goods. The recent operation led to the detention of illegally imported goods and counterfeit goods to the value of 24 million rand. Now, just to sketch the operations, these goods are mainly hidden in basements of buildings in Johannesburg and other areas. And we even have to use Joys of Life to gain access to the illegal storage facilities. These joint operations continue countrywide on a weekly basis, and surely this is a contributing factor in protecting SA economy and the local industry. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Commander. I hope your contribution actually raises the awareness in terms of the dangers of our customs officers and other law enforcement agencies when they fight criminal activities such as counterfeit goods and broader illicit trade. Some people do lose lives in this particular enforcement action, but it is highly patriotic for our officers to find themselves in the battlefield, in the front line. And we highly appreciate the efforts that are taking place across the board, from the police to the DTIC to the Metro Police, and everybody joining hands to fight this scourge of illicit trade and counterfeiting. There are two main legislations that I wanted to allude to. I'm not going to go deeper into the details of that. They are always there for everybody to have a look at them. The first one being the Counterfeit Goods Act number 37 of 1997, and the second one being the Customs and Excise Act number 91 of 1964. Both have got the one purpose of protecting the intellectual owners of intellectual property from infringement. You can go through that on your own. The second part is the one that actually deals with the issue of Section 113A of Customs and Excise Act, which talks to the powers of the officers. The detention of any goods, including those that are actually suspected to be counterfeit, falls within this particular area. And then it talks about what the officers may seize at the point where they have got reasonable belief that the goods are actually being counterfeited, they are being transited through the country, and they are, whilst they are found within the controller areas, such as within the ports of entry. The legislation also gives the powers for a search warrant and seizure without a warrant in terms of Section 5. This power is not taken lightly, and then it is taken in conjunction with the observation of our Constitution and different pieces of legislation. So in this instance, when an officer arrives at your premises, either as an MME or whoever is running the business, they consider you be infringing. If the inspector has got reasonable ground to believe that the required warrant of arrest, of the required warrant of search will be issued to him, should he, in terms of Section 6, apply for such a warrant, he will do that. The purpose is to ensure that there is no delay that would ensue by first obtaining the warrant and defeat the object or purpose of the entry, search, and seizure of the goods. But this and it is done within all the laws of our country. There are also duties of the brand holders, which are outlined there with regard to what is it that they're supposed to do. I've indicated earlier that within Customs and Excise, we've got the division called Licensing and Registration, where if you have got a copyright, as well as the goods that you are supposed to be protecting as your IP, you've got the opportunity to approach SARS and actually register such items in the register of the IP so that they can be protected. There are procedures that you can go through to ensure that that is happening. It is a very easy process that will help a lot of us. And I'm inviting all the brand holders and others who are coming with innovation to go and register. And that gives them the opportunity also to do a number of things like laying criminal charges with all the conditions that are stated there, as well as the civil proceedings that may ensue as a result of whatever is being infringed. Ladies and gentlemen, any person of interest in the protected goods, be it a lawyer, an agent, or a representative of such a person, may lodge a complaint, whether they are the holders, the licensee, or importers, and so on, including the SMME operators. The complaint must be, the complainants must lodge a complaint, usually in the form of an affidavit, and with the following, where the following material allegation must be made. Where there is an act of dealing in counterfeit goods that has been or is likely to be committed. Information and particulars to the satisfaction of the inspector, because you are coordinating this with them, that the alleged counterfeit goods are prima facie counterfeit goods. There should be sufficient information and particular the different penalties that are actually given to different levels of offenders. There are first offenders with the escalation to the repeat offenders that are actually used to deter those who are involved in that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very important, as I have indicated earlier on, that we identify the implications of counterfeit in terms of the SMMEs. Within that particular space, as I've already indicated, it brings about uncompetitive behavior leading to a variety of risks, where the diversion of the clientele leads to imminent closure of the shops. I've spoken at length about that. There is loss of investment of capital, criminal charges as a result of possession and dealing with illicit goods is the reality, because indeed we will follow that as the Act provides for that. Loss of trading inventory during the enforcement interventions is something that can be avoided if the SMMEs know what their responsibilities are and what is that they need to do. However, the SMMEs have a recourse in case something goes wrong during the time when they interact with the enforcement officers from customs and SARS as a whole. And what is the recourse? The recourse is contained in the dispute resolution process that SARS has actually committed itself to, and it is governed by the law. SARS is governed by the processes and systems that are transparent, very important, and lend itself to governance processes that seeks to ensure we adhere to such processes. As I said earlier on, our constitution prescribes the manner in which we engage and deal with different people, including the Section 2 of our constitution. SARS dispute processes are within the framework or prescribed by PAJA. Clients may exhaust all the internal appeal processes as contained in the Customs and Excise Act and rules, as well as the external document on this particular matter. This information is brought to your attention because we are saying that we are open to scrutiny, and then you are open to the recourse should we do something wrong whilst we are trying to enforce the law. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now moving into the different space. Prior to going into that, I have got the details of the contact center that you can utilize in terms of engaging with SARS on matters pertaining to the presentation in front of us. After having deliberated on the challenges, the manifestations of the illicit trade and counterfeit goods, I'm not going to do injustice to the work by not proposing the manner in which I think we can try and alleviate this particular process. There are different points that gets to be proposed in a short, medium, as well as a long term. I will summarize them in the next slide. However, the idea is that we need to work towards significantly reducing illicit trade incidents by a certain percentage. That will depend on the risk as well as the capacity that we have. We also have committed ourselves as SARS to improve tax and customs compliance. And then within this particular space, we can also measure that particular one as per industry. We have also committed ourselves to substantially reduce corruption and bribery in all its forms. That is the fact that I've already spoken to. The strengthening of national, regional, and international partnership to improve all legislative enforcement capacity and capability. The strengthening, and this is very important, strengthening of recovery and repatriation of stolen assets to combat organized crime, as well as the increase in criminal convictions to deter the criminals from doing that. How are we doing it in other industries? Is it possible that we can replicate the methodology that we are using in other industries to combat this scourge in counterfeit goods? I am convinced we can do that. As I indicated earlier on in the presentation, I said that there are 2 interagency working groups that we are currently implementing as SARS and other government departments. By the way, we've got 3. If you look at the Fusion Center that was established by the president to deal with the challenges of corruption within the PPEs during the COVID-19, is one of the examples of the government working together to root out the issues of corruption and address it to the letter. In this particular one, I've got 3 bubbles that are in front of you that represent the 3 strategic objectives that can be utilized or considered for utilization to address this particular problem. I'm going to say the whole of government, meaning that all the agencies that work within the government, within that particular sphere, working with business and civil society partnership towards the following activities. Every activity will be led by research, investigations, before we can go into the next bubble that talks about the improvements of government's ability to detect, prevent, and successfully combat illicit trade. It talks to the challenge that we spoke about earlier on, to say that there is limited capacity and capability to address this particular thing. So if we can be able to research and work closely with other stakeholders across the government, we will improve the government's ability to detect, prevent, and successfully combat illicit trade. The third one is about recognizing the fact that as a nation, we cannot do it alone. We are part of the global community. We have to increase our reach to the regional as well as the international law enforcement agencies to partner and then work towards eradicating any acts of illicit trade. How do we benefit from that kind of activity? Is that there are different international agreements that are in place that we are supposed to adhere to. Some of them we've acceded to them. And then we also have that point that I was talking earlier on in the previous slides about repatriation of funds. And then if we have to follow the funds and then make sure that those who have taken the funds are able to account for that, we will have done a lot in terms of ensuring that we are dealing with this particular problem. And we can also deal with the criminals who are based somewhere outside of the country by increasing our reach, by working together with other regional partners and international organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you very much for your attention in this particular intimate subject. I'd like to take back the ropes to the coordinator so that we can move to the next level. Thank you very much, Tate Hensen, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you very much, Mr. Moeng, for that comprehensive, detailed presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are committed to make it easy and simple to you to comply with all the relevant legislations that are available that are governing the illicit trade and the counterfeit. So I also want to confirm that this presentation from PET will be available in our website, www.sars.gov.za. And our website has been highlighted in this chart. I would like to take you in our next item in the program, which is the item of the questions and answers. Mr. Gumani Mgeri will be leading us in this item, and he will be accompanied by our panelist experts. I'd like to welcome you, Mr. Mgeri.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Mr. Msongweni. We'd also like to appreciate the time taken by our presenter, Patrick Moeng, to give a comprehensive view in terms of how the illicit activities or illicit economy, as well as the dealings in counterfeiting impacts us as a community, as a state, and as individuals, and the role that we can take or the role that we can play in responding to combating the scourge of these criminal activities. I am not alone here. I am joined with my panel members who will show themselves here quickly. I've got Patricia Jones, I've got Kumaran Moodley, I've got Nora, I've got Kumbula, as well as Patrick Chikosi. So these members are here to answer, colleagues, to your questions and concerns. I'm also joined by Commander Hugo Talliard. Encouraging you to post your questions on the chat so that we can attend to them to a greater extent possible. We have the first question, which I will ask Kumaran to tackle it. But before we go forward, We will also try in this occasion, try and give you clarity in terms of how can you go about registering for your business with SARS, whether you want to do import and exportation or you want to trade as a clearing agent. We will also give you a bit of info in terms of how would you go about reporting suspicious activities. The colleagues here on the floor will assist you with that information. Further to that, in case you want to import goods that may be subject to counterfeiting or to possible replicas, we'll try and assist you so that you know where would you have to go in order for you not to be found on the wrong side of the law. Kumbula Sibanda will take you through the details in terms of how do you go about starting your journey of compliance in as far as paying your taxes are concerned. Now, the first question, there is a question that is on the chat. It came from Anonymous. I'll read it out loud. There is a concern that there are counterfeit goods and clothing at places like the workshop in Durban, in Marabastad in Pretoria, as well as Oriental Plaza in Johannesburg. The question is, what is customs doing to respond to this trade of illicit and counterfeit goods in those areas and other areas in the country? Mr. Motley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mugeri. So SARS continues to work with all law enforcement agencies in addressing the trade in illicit goods. Like Commander Tulliard has explained earlier on, the National Rapid Response Teams are the ones that are responsible to focus on the illicit goods, and they work with all of the other law enforcement agencies in dealing with these operational activities. So in terms of the indication of certain of these high-risk areas, SARS, together with the other law enforcement agencies, will be conducting further operational activities to address the issues of dealing in illicit products. However, we do encourage the trading community, as well as all of the other law enforcement agencies and the brand representatives, to share any specific information pertaining to the importation, storage, and transportation of illicit goods. As SARS, a key priority for us is also to address and deal with these products at the time of importation, not when it's already at a retail or consumer level. So if we can address it at the point of importation, that would be the best situation that we all can be in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kumaran Motley. There is a comment from Azam Khan. It's an appreciation comment. It says, thanks very much for the opportunity, wonderful presentation. As SARS explored the possible implementation or introduction of utilizing blockchain technology throughout the value chain, as suggested by a former president of the OECD Task Force on Countering Illicit Trade, David Luna, to aid with tracking counterfeits and diversion of goods. We will come to that question. Then there is also a comment or a question from Anonymous. Anonymous is saying, why is SARS removing monies from traders' accounts without prior notice? Why is SARS removing monies from traders' accounts without prior notice? I think the question is not very much clear. If maybe Anonymous can put a bit of information so that we can be in a very good position to assist them. However, with the question with regards to whether SARS is considering implementation of blockchain technology and other artificial intelligence initiatives in combating, in countering illicit trade, I will ask Patricia Jones to share some detail with us. And further to that, Kumaran will make further inputs just to make emphasis on the remark that Patricia Jones will do.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and good evening to all the traders and colleagues online. Yes, SARS is definitely making use of blockchain technology, and we've started with a customs modernization program where e-commerce and the blockchain technology and data connectivity is very much part of our modernization journey. So we're working together with our SARCU and SADC counterparts to ensure that we can start looking at these, as well as with other agencies like Treasury and the WCO, as well as our other customs counterparts, to ensure that we can have a holistic approach into fighting this scourge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. Kumaran, do you have any further comments?
No, I think Patricia's covered it, Kumani. The fact is that we are looking into the technology and we are making progress with regards to implementation thereof.
Thank you very much. And then we'll go to the question about statistical reporting and accessibility of such information by traders and various individuals with regards to the estimations about the value of illicit market tobacco, alcohol, and textiles, and the tax loss that is related to such to those different textiles for the year 2020 and 2021. In other words, Naledi is saying, is it possible to get those reports? And how can I go about accessing that information? Patricia, I'll ask you to take the question for us.
Sure, thank you. On the SARS webpage, we normally publish trade statistics and enforcement actions and activities related to programs and projects and initiatives that we do. So if you go onto our SARS webpage under trade statistics, you should be able to find the relevant statistics for the 2021 tax year. If that's not available, you can also look under the customs program and enforcement activities that we do, where we then say what the illicit campaigns are, how many things we've detained or confiscated, the values of those. So it's also available on the Customs and Excise landing page on the SARS webpage, but more prominently on the trade statistics, and then also in our strategic documents that we do publish. There would be information available on that document as well. So our strategic document that gets published through the Commissioner's Office under what's SARS are all about, then you'll find the strategic documents. In those documents, there's also statistics and values related to illicit goods and counterfeit goods and our actions taken on those. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Patricia, for the comprehensive response. There is also remarks from Francois. He says, thanks to SARS colleagues for a great webinar and the invitation. We welcome the comments about working with SARS, and we try to do as much as we can. More than 60% of the tobacco market is now illicit, costing SARS about 19 billion rand this year in lost revenue, and the legal industry on its knees for survival. That is a comment from Francois. The next comment also is coming from Dineka Pillay. Dineka Pillay is asking a question to say, is there a process or a declaration that entity taxpayers are required to make or follow to confirm that they do not trade in counterfeit goods? Is there a process that traders or manufacturers are required to declare or to confirm that they don't trade in counterfeit goods? From a banking point, if the question is raised, banks have no measures to verify the correctness of that information. That is a question coming from Dine. But before we take that question, I will also ask Nora. Nora also would like to share with us, as we are taking, and as we are allowing you to bring more questions, we would like to share with you, colleagues and stakeholders, the process that you need to consider or need to go by for you to register your clearing agent or for any customs and excise tax types. Nora, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good day, everybody online. Before a client can be able to do any activities with customs, SARS requires a client to register as an importer or exporter. We have recently launched a electronic system, which is a RLA system, licensing, it's registration, licensing, and accreditation. The information for you to register, you can find it on the website under www.sars.gov.za. Then you go to the link customs and excise. It will give you various topics of client types that you can register for, including any prohibited and restricted goods, and information regarding that if you need information before you can enter the market under that restricted and prohibited goods. And in terms of protected brands, you can be able to get information as well under section 15A1, whereby you need to submit application directly to the national coordinator at Lehaye in Pretoria. Information can also be obtained on our SARS website and www.sars.gov.za. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Nora. As Nora has indicated, will provide you also with the link where you can access to get more information. I think I have also missed one comment from Francois. Francois is asking a question to say, when can we expect local manufacturers flooding the market with cheap illicit cigarettes to be closed down? He says they are well known within the range of some of the SARS offices, and they welcome SARS efforts in combating this. So there are two questions, and I will ask Patrick Chikosi to get ready to take the first question or the first remark that talks about what is SARS doing to close down the entities of those involved in illicit practices. And then the next question, I will ask Commander Talliard to take it, and it has to do with whether there is a process to confirm that within SARS, whether there is a process to confirm that I don't deal in illicit and counterfeit goods. The floor is yours, Patrick.
Thanks, Mr. Mugeri, and thanks to the colleagues as well as the participants in this forum. Thanks, Mr. van der Merwe. It is a huge task that requires all stakeholders to be united in terms of tackling this scourge of growing non-compliance clients in the industry. We heard your calls for several years, but we have begun to gather good intelligence to tackle some of the challenges that perhaps in the previous years we couldn't do. I will talk about the recent moves that we have done with the assistance of all stakeholders, including our own risk-based methodology. There are a number of companies that were busy auditing, and as such, we'll follow due process. Once we are satisfied with the findings, we'll then ensure that necessary steps are taken. We don't just close the shops without following due process. What we need to do to satisfy ourselves that all gaps are closed and all leads are followed. Otherwise, we'll be closing haphazardly, and that will lead us to go to litigation, which will take some time. So we are aware of those, some of the manufacturers, and we have put our eyes on those, and it's a matter of time to provide feedback to the community that we're trading in, particularly the cigarette and tobacco family, in terms of where we are. But rest assured, we are busy following some of the manufacturers that are known to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such a comprehensive response. Can we also deal with a question which says, does SARS currently have a process where entities can come and declare that, or where they are required to make a declaration that they don't trade in counterfeit goods? Commander Talliard, can you take the question for us?
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, the hotline is there for risk alerts, for the negative or the non-compliant, and the compliant is most welcome to report aligned to the Customs and Excise Act. There's certain rules to follow, and those reports and production reports need to be submitted timelessly, weekly, daily, and monthly to monitor compliance. And we prioritize exactly the focus on illicit trade in cigarettes as well as counterfeit goods. Yes, that is from my side, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Program Director. I think if I can just add to that question as well. From a SARS perspective, we work with the attorneys and the trade attorneys specifically on that, together with the Department of Trade and Industry. So if there are any SMMEs or traders that are unsure of a product, they can approach SARS, and we can then engage with them together with these attorneys to look at whether the products are trademark specific and protected, or they can approach the Department of Trade and Industry to say, I'm interested in this product. Is it protected, or can I trade or deal with these products? Thank you. I thought I'd just add that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. It obviously cements on what Commander Talliard have touched on. The next question that we have received is coming from Khomotso Mukhale. She say, may I ask Nora to say license renewals were extended till 1st December. And the question is, can I renew my clearing agent license online? Please advise. So that is the follow-up question to the licensing remarks that you have made, Nora.
Thank you. As per indicated, the new licensing system, RLA, will cater for all clients that have already migrated to the RLA system. If you are a clearing agent and you've already migrated your profile to the new system, you will be able to register and renew your license on the RLA system. In instances whereby you have not migrated to the RLA system, you will have to submit your application per normal SSM manual process, whereby you will submit your application via the nearest customs branch in your region. The email addresses are on the website, as we are trying to reduce inflow of people walking into the branches. So you can be able to email your application to the nearest branch in your region, and the details can be found on our website as previously indicated under www.sars.gov.za under Customs and Excise. Then you can go to registration, licensing, and accreditation. In short, it's RLA. You will get the details of the branches where you can submit your DA-185 for renewal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe the response is quite helpful. There was also a question which talks about reporting of suspicious activities. To say, how do I go about reporting suspicious activities? What are the hotline numbers? And I will read the numbers to you in no time. While we are at it, I would like one of the panelists also to take the floor. There is Miriam who's asking to understand what is the percentage of custom stops and seizures seizures results in which results in successful prosecution? What percentage of custom stops and seizures results in successful prosecution? That is a question from Miriam. I will ask Patrick to take the question, and further to that, Kumaran can make emphasis on the response.
Maybe to start off, to put Miriam, Madam Patel at ease, we have a frontline staff which mainly comprises of customs operation. These are your typical processing and inspection team, and backed up by rapid response, as well as the customs audit. Those are what we call frontline staff. So at the front line, we'll detect what's happening if there's any, perhaps any non-compliance. And depending on the veracity of that non-compliance, the law allows us perhaps to pursue an individual civil or criminal. Where it has to be a civil, the case will be finalized within those frontline staff. But where we picked up an element of gross non-compliance, perhaps that warrants criminal investigation, we further refer it to our counterparts, which is illicit trade, that will pursue criminal investigation. It is in that end where they will deduce whether the case is worth taking it to court or not, because you know, the court procedure may prolong the whole exercise. It may take longer than what perhaps we anticipate to prosecute one particular client. But I will allow perhaps my colleague, Mr. Modley, to answer on criminal prosecution as the frontline staff, as we detect and take corrective measures in the form of penalties. Where we cannot impose penalties, we then pursue further investigation through the illicit trade, which then determine whether it has to go for criminal prosecution or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Modley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the percentage, we do not have a figure in terms of the total percentage in terms of cases that are referred for prosecution at this stage, but we can make that information available to Ms. Patel. But what I would like to say is that a number of the matters are really dependent upon the support from other law enforcement agencies, because we rely heavily on both the South African Police Services as well as the NPA in terms of taking these matters through the court process. So we are in engagements with them. And it's also critical to understand that these cases are dependent on the nature and the extent of the contravention. So in some of the cases, whilst we may feel that it warrants a criminal prosecution, the prosecution authority might determine that, based on the nature of the contravention, it would warrant a nominal penalty, and the matter can be resolved at that level administratively within SARS. So I think we are looking into the fact that we're also competing amongst other more serious offenses with the court's time. So it is very critical for us to relook at the amount of cases that we put into the National Prosecuting Authority space at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. The next question. The next question is asking if there is also a list of counterfeit goods that are available, which awareness can be raised. So the question is, is there a list of counterfeit goods available that can be made accessible to our traders and travelers? While Patricia is preparing to take care of that one, I want to read the following numbers for reporting the suspicious activities, theft, fraud, and related corruptions. The hotline number is 0800 002870. 0800002870. That's the hotline number that you may use to report suspicious activities. Back to the questions, Patricia. The question about the list of goods that are counterfeit, the prohibitions and restrictions.
Thank you. On our SARS website, we do have a list of prohibitions and restrictions, which gives you a very good idea of what goods are strictly prohibited and what goods are restricted that require some form of certificate or permit. As to what the counterfeit goods products are, I think what we can do is we can create a sort of a pamphlet or an awareness session as to say what are the most probable counterfeit goods that we've encountered to date. So mostly these would be in the clothing and textiles, cigarettes, alcohol, medicines, those sorts of things. So we can put some form of program or pamphlet together, and we'll publish that on our website so that people can be aware of what are the most common counterfeit goods that we've come across. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that will be very helpful. That we obviously create a list in terms of our experiences in dealing with illicit activities as well as counterfeiting. That will come in handy for our traders and travelers alike. The next comment coming from Logan. Logan is saying, dear SARS hosts and panelists, thank you for taking the time to arrange this webinar on illicit trade and counterfeit procedures. Very informative and indeed with good intelligence from all stakeholders, including us freight forwarders. Together we can overcome the illicit trade and non-compliance. This is also in response to the call by Patrick Moeng earlier in the presentation that one of the efforts and initiatives is to work with the whole of government as well as a wide range of stakeholders involved in the trade and the freight forwarding to combat and to stop the scourge of these criminal activities. That comes from Logan Mukesh from Pecon Logistics. Indeed, is also very glad to see the facilitator of the panel, which is myself. So the next question, we will ask Mr. Kumblas Vanda. Kumblas Vanda also comes with a intense experience from tax products point of view. Kumblas, he will tell us, especially our traders, those who are new startups, the small, the medium enterprises, to say, in case you want to start your compliance journey with regards to paying your taxes, be it pay as you earn, VAT, various tax types, what are some of the steps that you need to take, as well as how can you go about it? Kumbula, you may take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mugeri. As I said, my name is Kumbula. I'll just briefly tell you your journey within domestic taxes. Once starting from when you register a company, which I assume most of the traders or agents are registered companies. Once you register, we expect you will get your CIT number, which is your income tax number. Once you get your number, we expect you to start your compliance journey. How do you start that? First of all, you need to make sure that your company details are updated. Make sure that we can contact you when necessary, and also make sure that the representative, the information is updated, so that you can be in a position to register for e-filing and do all the transactions online. We are encouraging most of our small business to do their business online. We also have the facilities or the ability. We are also teaching a small business on tax issues, starting from compliance, registration, what types of taxes are you supposed to register and when are you supposed to register. Mind you, being compliant, you may have your everything in order in customs, but you still need to pay your income tax. You need to come and declare on your profits. So we are looking at that. We are trying to help all those who cannot do that for themselves. We are conducting some also education seminars as well as webinars. You can also go and visit on the YouTube. You'll find how to do some of the declarations. On the part of declaration, or especially on VAT, where do you register for VAT? That is domestic VAT. There are thresholds. If your income becomes more than $1 million, that becomes compulsory. You should register for VAT. You can also voluntarily register for VAT, depending on your business. But your income you should be declaring that you are making 50,000 and above. Pay as you earn, you also need to register for pay as you earn, but not everybody should register for pay as you earn. It depends with the number of the salaries for your employees. So you also need to visit. We also have our website where you can get the details when to register and what are the steps to do that. You can do that on e-filing, and who must register for pay as you earn. So there's no need to say you've got an employee who is earning less than the threshold of about 89K per year. You don't need to register for that. So we only register those who, when you have got employees with income which is above the threshold. So be on look at that. If you don't know how to do it, you can refer to our website. You can also contact our engagement teams or in the regions. There are teams which we can organize some training online where possible. Although we are trying to avoid contact, we can arrange a contact a training where we can come to your office, or we can arrange some you guys to come to the branches and we can conduct that training. But we are really encouraging that you be on lookout or also attend our webinars and also visit our website. We have quite a number of education materials on those. And when it comes to declarations, especially for income tax, that's for your company tax. Also be on the lookout of some people may advise you to declare any returns. We picked that up, so it's just a warning for you. If you don't know how to do it, please get advice. We don't want just to find you to find yourself in the wrong side where somebody just say, just declare any return, you can get your clearance, tax clearance there. Because in most cases, people want to get a tax clearance, then they quickly declare any returns, or through bad advice. We believe as SARS that everybody is honest, and we also say we will try to teach you when you are not aware of what is happening or how to do some of the things. So in short, from our side as a small business, it is a unit which looks at small business. There are some incentives which you can register as a small company. So if you like your turnover tax, I've just mentioned a few of those, you must take advantage of that. Visit our website. We've got a web page on the SARS website for small business. You will go through and you'll find all the incentives which you have. But for more information, I will refer you to our webinars and other information you can get. Mugere, I think in brief, I don't want to take much of the time. I think I briefly touch on what I wanted to tell them. That is, you are not only compliant in customs until you are also compliant in your income tax, VAT and pay as you earn when necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kumbula. The message from Kumbula is that SARS is at your service. If you run a small business and you need to know more information, you can always contact us. We can make arrangements to visit your premises and assist you with knowledge and skill as to how do you go about complying, doing your declarations, and getting to know more information. Alternatively, you can visit the SARS offices on arrangements and as per appointment, and we've got dedicated personnel in different regions who can assist you with that information. We will take the last question. And after this question, I will also ask Mr. Patrick Chikosi in wrapping up as a courtesy to our traders, based on the experiences of SARS making interventions and working with traders, what advice would he give to them in order to improve the relationship between SARS and themselves, and as well as becoming a credible tax citizen? So Mr. Chikosi will take that. But before we deal with that, there is a question about appeals to say, how long does it take for SARS to respond to the outcome of a DA51 appeal, which is normally done when there is a SARS letter of demand? Mr. Chikosi, you can deal with the question with regards to the timelines on the appeal. Further to that, and then you may also give a word of courtesy to our traders in terms of your experiences as to how can they best make themselves credible tax citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Mugere. Perhaps let me give this opportunity to Madam Jones to answer the first question. I will then provide perhaps on my side, what can we do to assist one another in improving compliance and ensuring that all citizens are tax compliant. So colleagues and participants in general, so the Commissioner of SARS has articulated 9 strategic intents. The top 3 are key to what perhaps we should emphasize on, re-amplify on. I guess that because of the time, I will only stick on those 3. The first one, it talks about providing certainty and clarity to taxpayers in terms of their obligation. And that is important to know where you stand between us and you as a trader. So in terms of legislation, in terms of your obligation, whether you are a taxpayer or not, whether all that we are administering are relevant to the laws that perhaps we provided to you. The second one relates to when we are luring you to us to say, those who are complying with us will make it easy, very easy for you to come with us any time of the day, and we can even cooperate in terms of the joint initiative, in terms of tackling some of the non-compliance issues. And for those who do not want to comply, then we exert maximum pressure in terms of the strategic objective number 3, SO3. And that on its own, if you choose or elect not to cooperate with SARS, given that we spend a lot of time on strategic number 1, providing clarity as well as luring you into SARS in terms of making easy for you to comply. The third aspect is to ensure that those who do not will ensure that we make it costly for them. And ultimately, of course, if they are cannot be rehabilitated, the necessary criminal step need to be taken. So I will end up there, but I will re-emphasize on the 2 key ones, because I believe here we have taxpayers who are willing to comply and who are willing to work with us. Our doors are open and we are always ready for you to assist where necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In closing, Patricia, the DA51 timelines and process.
Thank you. The DA51 only becomes applicable once the client has appealed. So the question related to the letter of demand. So if a client has been audited and they get a letter of demand and they are not happy with that letter of demand, they then have the right to appeal on the DA51. That DA51 needs to go to the specific branch office where the letter of demand was issued. So once we then receive the DA51, the DA51 must be submitted within 30 days once they get the letter of demand. So they've got a time period where they need to submit the DA51 to the relevant branch office, which is 30 days from receiving the letter of demand. We then will acknowledge that letter, the DA51, and within 5 to 15 working days, SARS would need to acknowledge that they've received the DA51, and then SARS would have a period of between 30 to 90 days, depending on the complexity and whether all documents have been received and the case can be appropriately heard by the appeals committee. So it would take roughly about 30 to 90 days, depending on complexity, on the finalization of that DA51. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Back to you, Program Director.
Thank you, my dear colleagues, for that exciting and interesting session. I think we had a good session on this one. I just want to remind our participant and everyone that these questions will be in our website under frequently asked questions. And if you haven't got your answer clear, please use that platform. And also in the chat, there's a number of links that our colleagues have sent you so that you can be able to get all the necessary information that you needed about today's webinar. We've almost come to an end of our webinar, and I hope the presentations and the deliberation have met all your expectations. Indeed, illicit trafficking of counterfeits threaten our economy, create an unhealthy business environment. Our higher purpose of collecting revenue is also seriously compromised with this illicit trade. So South Africans, we want to work with you. We need all of you to put our hand and help us to respond to these challenges of illicit trade. But most importantly, our SMME traders and travelers, please don't be a victim of these cheap and easy coming products in our market. That's why use our website, use our contacts, and if there are suspicious activities, as our colleagues have highlighted, please call us 0800-002870. Before we can close, I want to confirm that this is not the end of our journey. We will continue with our journey of providing clarity and certainty to you. Our next webinar is scheduled for the 28th of October. It will be about the registration, license, as well as accreditation. It has been a pleasure being with you, and please have a lovely evening. We will close with this video. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Fellow South Africans, I'm addressing you.
All your years of paying tax, you still wonder, why does it matter?
It is true that we are facing a great emergency.
It matters now more than ever. It matters to those who are exposed to harm to keep us away from it. The ones that leave behind all that they love. Your tax matters to them. Those who spend endless hours standing on their feet to care for others. It matters to those who are always at the heart of any crisis and our future generations. It matters to those who put so much love into giving selflessly to each and every family living on the breadline. It matters to all of us. To all taxpayers, pay your fair share. Do it for your nation. Your tax matters.